Ready?
Ready.
Hey guys, it's Matt with BleepinJeep.com. Today we are doing a Q&A question and answer mail sack video again with the famous Jeremy Rosy Cheeks, Silver Bullet. I don't think he likes rosy cheeks.
No, it's fine. I've heard that 1,000 times.
Anyway, we're going to try to answer a few of your questions. So if you have them, leave them down in the comments below every week or so. However often we can do this, we're going to try to answer your questions. I can't get to them all. Obviously, I get 20 questions a day or something like that. So we're going to direct you to the comment section below. Leave your questions there and we'll answer them as quickly as we can. Alright, so the first question I've got for you, Jeremy. I should mention, if you haven't watched the other video, we did one before this, but Jeremy knows everything. He's a know-it-all.
I have an opinion about everything, but I don't know it all.
Alright, so first question for you, Jeremy. What should a good battery read?
You mean volts?
Yeah, how would you test a good battery? With the engine off, with the engine running, and then how do I tell if it's the alternator or if the battery that's bad?
Well, your battery should read like 12.6 because it's a 6-cell battery and each cell is going to put out 2.1 volts. So it adds up to 12.6 on your battery. So
and that's with the car
engine off. With the engine off, your battery is going to read like a 12.6. Now, that doesn't mean that you do or don't have a bad battery, because you could still have a bad cell on a battery and it still read a 12.6, but when you put it under load, it can't handle that and it will drop below 9. If your battery drops below 9 volts under a starting situation, more than likely you could possibly have a bad battery. If it was reading a high 12s before and it drops below 9 volts, there's a good chance you have a bad battery there. So if you have a smiley face on your battery, then you're good. So
okay, so 12.6 volts when the vehicle is off. Now what about when it's running?
If it's running and your alternator is putting out correctly, now keep in mind, if you start your vehicle and your vehicle is just idling, sometimes your alternator will not excite and will not charge unless you rev it up. And some of you have seen this at some point where you start your vehicle, you turn on the headlights, and then when you give it gas, your headlights will perk up because your battery is going to put out 12.6, and when your alternator kicks in, it's going to put out about a 14.6, 14.8, somewhere in there. You don't want it to be any higher than that. If it is higher than that, then you probably have a voltage regulator problem and your battery light will come on, or you'll notice your gauge will go positive. Now, if everything's on and running and you still have that low 12s, more than likely your battery is probably good, but your alternator at that point is not charging, which isn't a good thing.
And the voltage regulator can be on the alternator, or it can be in the engine compartment separate.
Yeah, it can be completely separate at times, depending on the vehicles.
Okay, now how do you tell if it's your alternator or your battery? What would you do to test that?
Well, first off is have a complete charged battery, and then technically you need a tester to test that. That's going to load the battery to see what the battery voltage is going to do under a load and under like a starting condition. And then the next thing would be there is to know if your alternator is charging. Like I said, if it's putting out a 14.6, then you know your alternator is charging. If you are testing your battery but with the engine off and it's putting out 12.6, you start it because you know you have a charged battery, you had it on charger all night, and then you've got it good, you've been driving it around and you're testing your battery again and it's still not putting out a 14, then you know that your alternator is not charging at that point and you have a bad battery. And then at that point you need to take it to the parts store and have them check the alternator. So, but it could be a wire. I mean, again, it's not always as simple, but more than likely it's the alternator itself is not charging.
I've had some people say that there's a trick or something to check.
There is a trick.
Which one it is. Now, how would you do that?
You disconnect your battery terminals.
Disconnect the battery terminals?
Yeah.
While it's running?
While it's running. And if the engine dies, it means your alternator is not charging. Now, I've seen this work before and I've seen it not work before too. So that is not a surefire way. Some people say to disconnect the positive battery cable. You don't really have to worry about the negative battery cable. It's not doing anything. Disconnect your positive battery cable. If the engine continues to run, then that alternator is supplying enough power to run the engine and run the vehicle. But I have also seen where you disconnect that and it doesn't work, but it's not the alternator that's the problem. But it is a quick check. I mean, you can just disconnect the battery caramel and take it off. If the engine dies, then there's a good chance you have an alternator problem. But that's not always the case.
Cool. All right, let's move on to the next question here. My Jeep bogs down when I get on the gas.
Need a V8.
What could be causing this?
It's a 6-cylinder. Tell them not to get away from the 2.5. Tell them to put the 4-cylinder aside and get a 6-cylinder.
Well, that is true. The V8 has a lot more power, but I've seen a clogged catalytic converter do this.
Yeah, same as your air filter can do it. Your fuel filter can do it. A simple tune-up at times. Bad fuel, water in your fuel, and then as well as just a motor itself is just physically worn out and has a lot of blow-by at that point.
Right. I guess there's a lot more scenarios than we could just give you a direct answer. But like, what if it's completely like just won't even crawl? Like it's so bogged down when you hit the gas up.
Typically, that will lean towards your exhaust.
Exhaust.
Yeah, because like you'll go four-wheeling, you'll crush your exhaust pipe, and like you said, your catalytic converter will over time get more and more and more and more and more clogged. So it slowly but surely gets more and more worse and worse and worse. And at that point, so if it's like bad fuel or fuel filter first signs are it's going to stop at an idle. You pull up to a red line, it'll die. You know, but if it's but if you start up and keep going, that's fine. But you start getting and trying to get it going in RPMs. A lot of times it boils down to either your air filter itself is so clogged up that it can't breathe, it can't pull out any air, or it can't push the air out the tailpipe.
Gotcha. Okay, let's go to the next one. Okay, what are some things I should always be on the lookout for when I'm in the junkyard? Now, I've kind of covered this for the Cherokee, but Jeremy drives a CJ8. What are some things that you look for in the junkyard? Not just for Cherokees, but like for anything.
God, that's kind of broad there in that sense.
I know there's a York compressor. Where do you find the York compressor?
A lot of stuff. That was my first thing I was about to say. One of the biggest things that people like to get is a York. It's an air compressor off of Volvos, off of Fords. I think some Mercedes had them. I think even some Dodge vans had them, I think, you know. We found them on all kinds of stuff. AMC products for sure had them. We found them on like an AMC Eagle wagon one time. But they're real desirable. So anytime you're in a junkyard and you see a York air compressor, if you can pick it up, it's going to cost about 17, 20 bucks, something like that. A lot of people pay good money for them because they're harder to find in that sense. But they do come on a lot of vehicles, and there are 3 different types of Yorks. So if you do find a York, they're all worth money, but some are worth more than others, and you can research that from the taper of the shaft in that sense. So if you're really looking for the right one, research it. You find the right bolt to pull the clutch pulley off, you'll figure out which one it is immediately, and you'll know which one that is. Now, other stuff in a junkyard, if you're in a Cherokee, you need to get axle shafts. You know, everybody knows that. Pick up as many axle shafts as you can.
Definitely the front axle shafts for the Dana 30. You'll always need those, and they're very rare, but the rear Dana 44 out of a 88 and 89 Cherokee 2-wheel drive with the tow package and the Wagoneers had the Dana 44 that'll just bolt right into the Cherokee.
And then other parts, it's really hard because everybody's looking for the right part for their vehicle, but you got certain transmissions are, hard to find. Transfer cases, one of the well-known parts that people look for is the 9-inch 44 Ford combo. The high pinion Dana 44 and the 9-inch rear.
What would you find that off of?
Like Broncos and Ford trucks. In that sense, you'll find the certain one, I think it was 78, 79, that does not have the radius arm bushings on the front. The way they clamped on were a little different, and those are really desirable.
That's going to be full width though.
Yeah.
And what is the wheel pattern?
5 on 5.5.
5 on 5.5. So you could use JK wheels.
Are they 5 on 5.5?
No, those are 5 on 5.
I was gonna say those are 5 on 5. So
you'd have spacers or something?
You could do it as spacers or buy different wheels.
Right.
So, but that's real desirable because they only made those 2 years. But you got to kind of know what you're looking for in the Dana 44. A lot of people don't know the difference between a 30, a 35, a 44 or 60. So, but in the world of a junkyard, just got to kind of, depends on what you're looking for. You may be going to a junkyard for a Topaz or something. I mean, I don't know what you're going for the junkyard for. So if you're going for a Jeep, you know, everything's awesome in our world, you know. They did make a turbo kit for the AMC Eagle that goes on a 258 6-cylinder. That's super cool if you can find one of those. They make all kinds of neat stuff out there for that stuff.
I've only seen the AMC Eagle once in a junkyard.
Me too, but it had a turbo kit on it. It was really cool. So I'm just saying there are cool things out there. Study up on the engines if you're in the older stuff. If you're in the newer stuff, you're not going to find anything much different. But in the older stuff, study up on what could fit. You never know what you'll run across.
All right. I think that's all we've got time for today. So thank you, Jeremy. And we're going to answer your questions next time. Make sure to leave them below in the comment section. Also check out the website, BleepinJeep.com. We've got hats, stickers, all kinds of great stuff. We'll see you in the next video.
See you guys.